Start for you.
Yeah, it says recording started.
Okay. In 3. What's going on, everybody? We're back again, looking at some draft prospects for the 2023 NFL Draft. We are continuing with our wide receivers. We've already released a couple videos talking about the top 9. I guess you can say there's really no consensus after the top 4. I would say once you get past that, it's everyone has their own opinions and thoughts. And yeah, so we're going to be looking at in this video 6 more, and then in the next video 6 more. So we'll cover 21 in total. But anyways, as always, joined by my dad, Jeff. How's it going, Dad?
How's everybody doing? Good.
Boomer
Some,
up.
Pretty good wide receivers in this so-called second half of our evaluation, I guess. So I was kind of impressed. I was expecting a little lower echelon. Maybe some of these guys are not in some of the bigger schools, and they didn't get talked about as much. But some of them are going to they're going to be relevant in the NFL, and they're going to be relevant for your fantasy team and things like that. So
yeah, definitely. A lot of guys. I mean, I think we talked about it last episode, or last video, and we basically said, like, for drafts, there's going to be probably 25 to maybe mid 30s. 25 to 35 wide receivers taken. That's kind of the MO of how it is. A lot of them you'll never hear about, or they're going to be fringe roster players or 4th, 5th receivers or punt returners, whatever. But it's going to be a lot. We're covering 21, but there's going to be even more. And we'll wait and see with the NFL draft where some other guys get drafted quite high that we didn't cover. We'll have to go back and check them out because draft capital is important. I'll probably talk about that real quick before we get into the actual receivers. I did this with the quarterbacks and went back all the way to, I think, 2013 it was, and looked at all the top 20 finishes in fantasy total points for each year. So 200 finishes, basically 200 top 20 guys. And it was something like less than 17%, I think it was, came from quarterbacks drafted from the 4th round or later. So it's just very, very rare. So it just your chances of being fantasy relevant if you're drafted day 3, which is 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, or undrafted. And kind of the same thing with these receivers. I went back and looked for PPR. Top 20 each year, and 82% of the receivers that finished in the top 20 over those 10 years, 82% of them were drafted in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round. So 40% of those were 1st rounders. But yeah, 82% were either day 1 or day 2 picks, and only 18% were basically 4th round or later.
That's very relevant information there.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking. I mean, you when you think about it, like, yeah, that makes sense. But also when you actually put the numbers down of only 18% of the guys that are drafted that late are doing anything, and the guys that are doing things there's not a lot of them. It's like the Stephon Diggs and the Tyreek Hills, they made up a lot of that 18%, 2-3 guys. So we'll see where these guys get picked. Again, there's really no consensus rankings after, I don't know, the top 4 or 5. But we're going to start today with Rashee Rice from SMU. So, Dad, you want to start with Rashee Rice from SMU? Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. First guy on our list, and I started looking at a couple of videos on him. He looked good on video, and I was like, boom, oh, he fumbled. Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. It was just one video, one game. Then I looked at a second one, and boom, I think he fumbled a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was by accident looking at that or anything else, but I just kind of noticed that he's kind of he was a senior, so he's been around a little bit. So SMU is not a huge Power 5 school or anything like that. Guy's got some measurables of 6'1", 204. He runs a 4.5, which is considered pretty good. He caught 96 balls for 1,350 yards. So, but yeah, I don't know. That's not a guy. He didn't look horrible or anything else. If he's there on your draft board later on for your dynasty and you need to stash him, as we always say, where's he going to end up? What team's he going to be on? All that type stuff. But nothing impressed me on this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of I think I felt different about him than you. I kind of liked what I saw. I did see the fumbles, and it just happened. Maybe it was the few videos that we watched and the game film that we watched for this video specifically was that's just it happened to be a couple games where he fumbled, and maybe he never fumbled again. Yeah, I did see that, which is a concern, but I think can be fixed pretty easily. But good size. A lot of the guys we talked about in the second video last week was a lot of small guys. It's a little more traditional. He's 6'2". He's like maybe 205. So good size. He doesn't have a great speed or anything like that. He didn't have a lot of separation necessarily, but what I like about it is, he's a big touchdown guy in college throughout his time at SMU. He had 9 touchdowns in 2021, 10 touchdowns last year in 2022, which is always good to see. And he just seemed to, he could make contested catches. He could kind of jump out the building. I think his vertical in the it was like 41 inches in the combine, which is way above average.
That's ridiculous. By the way,
that's a pretty good. Yeah, his speed. He's not a big fast guy. I think he ran in the 4.51, so good speed, but not anything that's gonna, he's not gonna be outrunning everybody. He just seems very fluid to me. I don't know. I really liked what I saw from Rashee Rice, and all these guys I think that we're going to be talking about, a lot of them, it feels like they're going to kind of fit a role for NFL teams. And we're kind of going to be ranking, well, me personally, going to be ranking them more in terms of like fantasy. And I've mentioned this before of just, I always like to go for potential with fantasy. There's going to be a couple guys we talk about here where it's like, I think they're going to be good deep threats. And that's very valuable to an NFL team. But for a fantasy thing, you can't rely on, 3 catches every week. And maybe he gets 100 yards, maybe he gets 10 yards, and so when it comes to ranking guys like that, I tend to lean towards guys like Rashee Rice, just because I feel like he can be a little bit more than just kind of a one-trick pony for an offense. I think he can play on the outside. I've seen him compared to guys like Adam Thielen and even like a Keenan Allen, maybe not quite as good with the route running, but kind of that possession style receiver that's going to get a lot of volume potentially in an offense. So, but yeah, I overall I think I liked what I saw. We'll kind of talk about of these 6 guys we're going to talk to who's our favorite, but we'll kind of do that at the end. But yeah, it'd be very, very interesting to see where he goes. I think he's kind of projected to be like a 3rd rounder. So, that could mean he goes in the 2nd. That could mean he goes in the 5th. We don't know. But if he falls in the 3rd round, he's definitely a guy I'm going to be targeting maybe in that 2nd round of the Dynasty rookie draft. So SMU also is a very, we use the word gimmicky offense, but it's just an offense that does cater towards putting up numbers. Yeah, so you see his numbers: 1,300 yards, almost 100 catches, 14 touchdowns, and a lot of that is the product of the offense. But just overall, I kind of liked what I saw. I like that he can make contested catches, good body control, seems very fluid. But the drops and fumbles are always a concern, definitely. Anything else you want to talk about with Rashee Rice?
Not really.
Okay. we'll move on to our second guy, Xavier Hutchinson. He was the next guy we looked at, and he was from Iowa State. Another big guy, 6'3", 205, good size. What did you think about him, Dan?
Yeah, he runs 4.5, so he's a big guy. He's a little physical, which is pretty good. And he had 3 very good years in college, with Iowa State. So if you think about it, he caught 64, then 2021, 83. Remember who was thrown to him? Brock Purdy. Probably at least 2 of those years, 2020 and 2021. I just bring that up because he's an NFL quarterback now. And then caught 107 this past year. So he seems I kind of like the way he looked, and I don't know how he's going to equate to the NFL. He's a bigger guy. He seems like he can release from the line of scrimmage pretty good. So we'll have to see. He's gotten better every year, which is something. I think that's something important that we see these guys kind of moving up. He did only have. He's from Iowa State. He only had 1 touchdown versus his Big 12 conference. So that might be a little concern. So
yeah, about who he's doing it against and things like. You want to see him, produce against Ohio States and Michigans of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of watching him and I don't know, just nothing really seemed to jump out to me. Like usually when I'm watching these guys, and you're looking for, okay, how can they win in the NFL? Are they going to be like incredible route runners, slot guys? Are they going to blow the top off and take you deep? Are they going to go up and catch the ball? And he can do that. He was an incredible amount of targets, 160 targets, 107 catches last year, which is crazy numbers for the NFL. That's really good numbers. College, it's even more impressive. But it's just kind of a lack of athleticism. You kind of see that in his combine performances, where just everything was basically average. Nothing was. There's not one thing that kind of stands out. It was definitely fed a lot of underneath throws and things like that. Definitely has good body control, and he can, what that means is like he can go up and make the adjustments and make a catch. I like kind of the opposite of Rashee Rice. He doesn't drop many passes. I mean, he only had 6 drops, and you consider he had 160 targets. That's really good. So that's nice. You don't want to drop the ball, that's for sure, and to have good hands. But I don't know, like there's just not enough speed there to go deep. He's not necessarily the greatest route runner, in my opinion. He's just kind of a bigger guy that maybe is going to rely on a little bit of physicality to kind of win, and that can work. We see it from guys like a Mike Evans, right? He's a physical receiver that doesn't necessarily win with his speed. Kind of the same thing. He runs in the 4.5s, I think, at his combine, and it can work. It's just always one I'm a little hesitant on because I think it's kind of like the easiest thing. When you go from college to the NFL, everyone's physical. Most, 90% of the players are physical, big. They're working out all the time. It's their job to just be, bodies of a Greek god type of thing. And so
they've all grown up to
yep.
be men instead of teenagers and things like that. So
yeah, so it's kind of like the easiest thing. If you don't have the speed, you don't have the route running and the lateral cut ability. Like I think that physical style play is like maybe the easiest thing to get to for cornerbacks and to play against, because a lot of corners are going to be physical as well. So it's kind of like why, not that I didn't like Drake London last year, but I had guys like a Garrett Wilson over him or an Olave, and I liked him a little more just because London was winning a lot due to his physicality, and that has to be replicated in the NFL. And I think it's the one thing you drop off from. So, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to ignore the production, and yeah, I've seen a couple sixth rounds potentially like projected, or maybe a day 3 pick. So we'll see where he goes, but I don't know. I wasn't necessarily impressed. Nothing jumped out at me like it did with like a Rashee Rice, in my opinion. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about with Xavier Hutchinson?
I think let's move on to the next guy who I like a lot.
Yeah. Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, another Tennessee guy. We talked about Jalen Hyatt as, some people had him number 1 overall. Some people had him. Most people have him in the top 7. I would, and then he had his counterpart Cedric Tillman. So I'll start with him because I think maybe I'm a little different opinion than you, which is great to have different opinions and kind of guys that we like. But it's nice he's again more traditional size receiver, 6'3", 215. He was obviously on a really good offense. He did get hurt, I believe, last year, right? He missed some time last year.
Yeah, he missed a number of games last year, and
yeah, that's right. He had a ankle injury. I think it had required surgery as well. Something to keep an eye on. I think he actually came back from that injury, but he has had ankle surgery. Really good at making those contested catches that we just we talked about with Hutchinson. He goes up and catches the ball very well. I don't know. It just feels like, to me, again, he won a lot with his physicality, and can that be replicated in the next level? Of course, but again, I'm more going to lean towards the speed and the route running than the physicality part. And yeah, it just seems like I was reading a little bit about him. He was never put into motion and things like that. Like he always played out wide on the right side specifically, and that was his. Now, does that mean that's just how Tennessee ran their offense and that's where they wanted him? That could be it, and maybe he can be put in motion and be used a little bit more in a versatile way. But haven't seen it yet. So just that athleticism, maybe not enough speed to kind of threaten deep, and not necessarily, to me, the best route runner, but you can't deny that he can go up and catch the ball. So, yeah, we want to talk about him.
Yeah, this is kind of funny because they say, always look at the tape and look at the video and stuff like that. Well, this guy's got great video and, of his highlights and when he plays and things like that. He's been at Tennessee for a number of years, but he doesn't, there's something missing. I'm not sure what it is. I know he had an injury in his senior year. His best year was his junior year, or year 3, where he had caught 64 passes and had 12 touchdowns and things like that. And his senior year is this past year. I think he only played in about a half a dozen games. He's a big physical guy, but there's something that doesn't add up correctly. Like I said, his video, if you go look at some of his highlights, he looks great and things like that. But I still like him, I guess if he's healthy and he's in your offense and doing wonderful things, then everything should be good. But there's just something, I don't know, it feels like something's missing.
No, I get that for sure. Like maybe a little bit of inconsistency, or like something's just not there. I think he'll definitely have a role on an NFL team. his size, teams like, receivers that can block on the outside for their run game and stuff. It just adds a whole other layer to your offense. So he'll have a role for sure. And we'll just see if he becomes like a, consistent player. I think he's going to have to catch like touchdowns to kind of be fantasy relevant, in my opinion. And he definitely can. I mean, he caught 12 in 2021, which is a huge number. Big receiver, he can make those contested catches, which is what you need in the red zone. But if he's not relying on that, or if he's not getting those touchdowns, I don't know if he's going to be able to give you much more. Maybe like almost like an Alan Lazard. I think he's better than Alan Lazard, but I just think of him in terms of like, if he's not catching 10 touchdown passes, he's kind of useless in the fantasy world. Yeah. I think he's going to go relatively high. I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. So it's going to be hard to ignore that. Because again, we just talked about like the amount of guys that come, it's the day 1, day 2 picks that do make an impact. So another one of those where I just want to see where he goes. Yeah. And again, going back to how they didn't really use him. They used him in one spot basically all year. That could just be the offense. We talked about it with Justin Fields. He never ran the ball at Ohio State, right? Look at him now, right? Or Melvin Gordon never caught a ball at Wisconsin, and now he was one of the better pass catching running backs, I'd say, for a few years. So it could be a scheme thing for sure. Yeah. Anything else you want to say on Cedric Tillman?
No, I think that's about it. I think I said everything I wanted to say.
Okay. So we got 3 more guys. Next guy we're going to get into is A.T. Perry. I don't know what the A.T. stands for. I actually meant to look that up. But anyways, A.T. Perry, you want to start off? Tell me what you think about him.
Yeah, he's from Wake Forest. So
Yep.
He's a bigger guy, really big, 6'5", 6'5", 205. He runs about a 4.4, 4.4, 740, which is not bad for a guy that big. He has a very large, very big catch radius, as you expect at somebody with 6'5". But he had a couple of he had his last 2 years. He had some pretty good numbers at Wake Forest. Caught 81 passes last year, and the year before that, 71. And touchdowns were really good, 11 and 15. I think he has a little bit of a high drop rate.
Mm-hmm.
So he has some problems in that area. Yeah. But I think moving forward, this guy, again, has probably said this a number of times. He gets on the right team, and not sure who to compare him with. But
yeah, it's kind of hard when you get a 6'5", big receiver, and especially a guy that he's running in the 4.4s. There's very few guys that do that. I was looking up. If he is, I've seen 6'4" other places, 6'5". If he is 6'5" and runs a 4.4, I think I looked at again the combine results from since 2000, and he's like one of like 20 guys who would do that. That were that tall and ran in the 4.4s or higher. And that doesn't mean anything necessarily, because a lot of those guys you've never heard of. A couple of them you have, like Christian Watson and Calvin Johnson. But there's also a huge list of guys that just never did anything. So I'm very, very interested to see him. And he's probably the one I'm most interested in to see where he goes. Because I think he's kind of project probably. You're not going to really see much from him next year, but he has everything you kind of desire in a receiver in terms of the 6'5", runs a 4.4, huge catch radius, like you said. Maybe he could be a little heavier, but he's I think he's under 200 pounds at 6'5", which is kind of crazy. Or maybe he's right around 200, I forget. But he's definitely like a project, and he can be a big threat guy. He can play on the outside. He can go up and catch it. I really like what I saw from A.T. Perry, but like you said, inconsistent, right? Just like there's something there where something's missing, and I think like with a year in the NFL, and having the right coaches around you, I think his potential is pretty sky high in my opinion. I again, and that's what I always look for. You're right about the drop percentage. Does have some drops, but other than that, I mean, it's kind of hard to find things that you really don't like about the guy. Very productive in college, and again, you can't teach 6'5", 4.4", right? You just can't teach that. So
not really.
Yeah. But yeah, I've seen projections of him like in the third round as well. I've seen second round. I've seen fourth round. You kind of see all over the place, and that's why I just said I'm really interested to see like if he does get second round, third round draft capital. He's going to be very high on my dynasty rookie draft list. Of a guy that I'm gonna be targeting in those early second rounds, maybe even depending on what I need. So, A.T. Perry, that's who we're talking about. Anything else on him? Should we move on?
Let's move on to the Cincinnati guy.
Yeah, Cincinnati, Tyler Scott. He's a burner. What about him, Dad?
Yeah, you said it. He's got wheels. He's pretty fast. Played at Cincinnati. He's 5'11", 185. So that's not a bad size for having the speed and things like that. I think one of the weird statistics I seen about him, or most of his touchdowns are over 30 yards. So obviously Cincinnati, they took advantage of that speed. He had 9 touchdowns last year and 5 the year before. So he didn't have a huge number of receptions last year, 55, year before 30. So nothing great as far as production, but I'm sure when they got him the ball, he looked very good on video. Looked like he got him involved in a lot of long passes and things like that, kind of taking advantage of his speed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a burner. I saw that stat too. It was like a crazy number, 30+ yard touchdowns. He's a home run guy, I think I saw somewhere that he was projected to maybe even run in the 4.2s. I think in his combine he ran in the 4.4s. I'm not sure what happened there. I don't know if that was just overestimating his speed or something happened at the combine or something. I don't know. Maybe he just had a bad 40 but people were expecting him to run a lot faster than he did. And he seems, when you watch his film, he seems a lot faster. So he's a smaller guy. He's 5'11", 185. And yeah, I mean, again, he's the perfect example of like when you compare him to the last guy we talked about, A.T. Perry, where like I can see the path for Perry to be a starting outside receiver, playing 80%, 70% of the snaps, whatever. And I can see that potential. With Tyler Scott, I don't see that at all. And I see that he's going to play on the outside in 3 or 4 wide receiver sets, and he's going to be that deep guy. He's going to one running down the field. That's very valuable for NFL teams. Not so valuable for fantasy teams. I saw a comparison of Marquise Goodwin for him, and basically what that means is like, yeah, you're probably going to hear a couple times a year of Tyler Scott has 3 catches and 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? And you're like, holy crap, I need to get this guy. And then he does nothing for 6 weeks, like that, anywhere close to that.
Yeah, some teams need that type of guy, though.
For sure. Yeah, very valuable for teams. And that's why he's projected probably as like a 3rd rounder again. Now, for fantasy, it's just, those Marquise Goodwins, they're super valuable, Quez Watkins is another guy for Philadelphia who's kind of like that, a little bit bigger, but and these guys are valuable for sure. But when we're talking fantasy, and when I compare him to a guy like T. Perry or a guy like Rashee Rice, I'm going to take those guys almost every time, because of the potential, right?
Yeah. By the way, Marquise Goodwin was an Olympic sprinter, so so that's what they're comparing him to. That corresponds with what you were talking about earlier. They expected him to be a 4.29 guy, and
if you made me put money, $100 on who's going to have a longer NFL career, Tyler Scott or A.T. Perry, I would put money on Tyler Scott. But if you're telling me for fantasy purposes, who's going to have more of a potential to be a top 15, top 20 guy, it's going to be Perry and not Scott every day of the week. So that's how I look at things, and 100% correct, but hopefully he can develop and do a little bit more. I just don't see him playing in the slot. I just didn't see the route running or the lateral movement for that. So just seems like he's going to be more of an outside receiver going deep. So should we get to our last guy?
Sure.
Michael Wilson for Stanford. Stanford's very hard to evaluate, in my opinion. Which Michael Wilson, 6'2", 209, Stanford Cardinal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bigger guy, 6'2". He's a senior, so he's been there a few years. He's kind of a long strider. His 40 was 4'8".
4'5'8", I think.
I'm sorry, 4'5'8". I meant to say, and so he's kind of you look at his video and he looks pretty good, but I think he had some injury problems also in college. So in Stanford wasn't really the knockout offense, which is kind of funny because they got a quarterback that who's considered pretty good, and but he only had I don't think he had any more than, just looking at his stats, his best year was last year at 27 receptions. But I know he had some he had a very good Senior Bowl. That's one of the things. This is where the guy, before the combine, the Super Bowl week, seniors go down to Mobile, Alabama. They play in the Senior Bowl, and he had a really good Senior Bowl, which kind of all the scouts are there and things like that. So he hasn't had huge numbers. I don't think he's played like a full year, but he's a bigger guy. He runs not too bad. Sorry, I lost the. What do we say? 4.58. That's okay. Yeah, one of his comps are is like Juju Smith-Schuster, so which he doesn't have a bad career, but
and I think that comp when I think when a lot of people do the comps, they're not necessarily comping like, oh, this is what his career numbers are going to be. They're just saying this is like the kind of player he is, right? So, Juju's not going to go deep very often and take the top off, but more of a kind of a bigger possession type of receiver. And yeah, he's one of those where, like, if you just kind of look at the stats, you don't see it. It's like, no, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 27 catches, like what? But then they become great pros for whatever reason. And his speed's not necessarily great, but I think don't they do like a 60-yard timing as well, or something like that, where like even longer distance, like, and I think I've heard that he would test out better if it was like a 60-yard run rather than a 40-yard run. Like, it takes a little bit to get his speed going, kind of like what you said.
A long strider.
Yeah. Strong guy. And then I also read in one of the combine drills is a 10-yard split, and he had a 1.5 seconds, which I'm not super familiar with the 10-yard split, but apparently it's really good to how you get off the line of scrimmage. And I guess 1.5 seconds for a guy that's his size is really good. And so you want to see the guys be able to kind of get off that line of scrimmage kind of explosively. So I liked him. I liked what I saw, for sure. Very limited. You're not going to find much. But
by the way, just to add to it, he's only played 14 games in 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's a concern. You'd have to dig a little deeper on what his injuries were and what his problems and stuff like that. Again, when we look at his video or his tape or something like that, he's got some really good plays, really good games. So, but if you can't stay on the field, then you got a problem.
For sure. Yeah, and it is a concern when you see it multiple times a year, right? And I think that's what's happened. Like, every year, he's basically been hurt. Would you say 14 games? I think 10 full games the past 2 years. But he kind of has everything there to be a consistent receiver, a wide receiver 2 on a team. And again, I like that potential. You go back to the guy we talked about before, and Tyler Scott. Again, his role is kind of like, what his role is going to be in the NFL, and it's going to be that deep threat. Michael Wilson has the chance to be like a Juju, being that a receiver that can be a consistent player for fantasy. Maybe not a stud, but he's definitely going to provide value. So those are the guys I'm looking for sure. So it was also nice seeing they used him in like end arounds, like handing the ball off to him in an end around, and it's always good to see that you're able to do those type of things. Just shows your versatility. Yeah, jet sweeps and end arounds, and putting you in motion and stuff like that, because that's what the NFL is doing now. So, so out of these 6 guys, would you say who's maybe your favorite as like a fantasy guy in the future? Did you say Cedric Tillman, or?
Yeah, I like Tillman, and just based upon his production, Xavier Hutchinson.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely the bigger guys you prefer, and I think my 2 would be Rashee Rice, SMU, and Michael Wilson from Stanford. Probably those 2 guys, and then A.T. Perry following up behind them, knowing that I think Perry's going to take a year to develop. So, but yeah, if there's nothing else we got, we'll end it here with 6 more receivers. We've done 15 in total, and we're going to do 6 more in our next video. So we will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.